So welcome back to the channel, and in this one we're going to take a look at doing this using Inventor, and I will kind of give you your cautions here in the beginning. So if you remember, we looked at this using AutoCAD and we kind of had some things that we had to kind of examine there. First, we had to figure out, do we want to make this as one piece or do we want to make this as multiple pieces, meaning that each one of these parts would be its own individual part. And you're still going to have to apply that when we look at Inventor, but that's going to determine how many files that we're going to make, right? So if we're going to decide to do this as individual parts, just remember we have to create 4 separate parts. And this is where AutoCAD has its advantages over Inventor, right? So we're going to create 4 separate parts, and then we'll bring them in as an assembly. Now, we won't be able to fit them together where they're all as one. So in order for us to complete that task, we're going to have to do them all in one file, right? So what I'm going to do in this video is I'm going to do both of those. I'm going to give you an assembly version of it, and I'm also going to do it to where I'm going to give you a all-in-one piece of that. And we're going to also look at the different angles on both of them, right? So we're going to examine both of those in this video. All right, so the first thing I have to do is kind of do some assumptions, right? We have to assume that this is either in inches or in millimeters. So you can determine that whichever standard method that you're going to use to create this. I'm going to create it in millimeters. So what I'm going to do is I just clicked on the new icon here, and then I'm going to go to metric, and I'm going to create this as an IPT, right? So I'll go ahead and create this one. Now, in this first thing that I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be creating this all as one. So I'm going to create 2 separate files. One is going to have the angle going straight down, and the other one is going to have the angle kind of tilted up at that 45 degrees that we did in AutoCAD. And I'm going to do that to be able to achieve creating those views. And then in my last option, what I told you in the intro is that we're going to take a look at doing this as an assembly, right? Now, the only benefit of doing it as an assembly is that I can combine both of those different sets in there. So I can tell it that, hey, one instance it's at this 0 degrees, and the other instance is at it's at a 45 degree, right? So first we're going to create it all as one piece. All right, so let's go ahead and take a look at creating a 2D sketch. Decide which plane you want to create it on. I'm going to start off by creating it on the XY plane here. And then I'm going to start off with a circle, right? So once my ribbon change, I'll go to circle. I'm going to click here in the center, and then I'm just going to create a couple of circles. I'll go ahead and put my diameters on those circles, right? So this first one has a diameter of 50, and then the inside one has a diameter of 30. So this one will be 50, and then this one will be 30. All right, so at this point we're finished with this one. Let's go ahead and hit the finish sketch. Zoom out a little bit. And then I'm going to extrude this, so I'll go to extrude. It's going to ask me which profile that I'm looking to extrude. So remember that I can either extrude the inside or this kind of outside part here. So I only want this part here, so I'll select that. You should give it should give you a preview of it now. Let's give it a distance. Remember that overall distance of this is 95. And then I have to decide which direction do I want it to go. Do I want it to go this direction? Do I want to send it back that direction? What I like to do is go ahead and make it symmetric. So it's 95 long, and it's going to divide that 95 in half going both directions. All right, let's go ahead and hit OK on this. All right, so for the next piece here, remember that if we refer back to the drawing, is that this face here, this next piece is going to be 15 to the inside, right? So what we need to do here is go ahead and create a plane here that's 15 inches or millimeters, millimeters off of here. And I'm going to do the exact same thing when it comes to creating this back part here. I'm going to create that at a distance of 20. So these are the 2 numbers that I'm going to use to create these next 2 pieces. Also, that distance that we did before on this middle piece here was the 95, right? So we're going to kind of step through all of these dimensions on this front face here. Okay, so the easiest way of creating a plane here is go to the plane icon here. I'm going to select this face, so I'm going to left click and hold, and I'm going to drag backwards, right? So I'm going to drag into mine. When I let go the left click button there, it's going to give me a number here. So I'm going to type in -15. And the reason why it's negative is that you see that it's going opposite of this arrow. So there's my -15. Go ahead and hit the check button there. And then I'm going to select this plane and I'll create a sketch on it. Alright, so once I create that sketch on it, it rotates around to it. I'm going to click the Slice Geometry button here at the bottom, and that's going to cut me right to the inside of this. And then I'm just going to go ahead and start projecting this outside circle here, since that's the one that I'm going to need. So I'll go to Project Geometry, select that circle there, and then I'll draw a circle from this center going out this direction. Now remember that this circle has a radius, right? It's a radius of 35. When I go to put my dimension on it, it's set up as a diameter dimension. If I want to change that, before I left click and place this dimension, do a right click, and then I want you to choose Dimension Type, Radius. Once you do that, it'll change, and now I can type in, well, once I click, now I can type in 35. Alright, so I have that number. Now this is that dimension that is going to have a little play to it, right? And I know that going in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to create my other circle that's out here. And I'm going to draw a line in between those, right? So I'm going to draw a line from that center point right to that center point. All right. We're going to give that line a dimension. So I'll go to dimension. I'm going to select this line here. I'll come down and you see my little cursor give me that different little icon next to it. Once I have that, I'll do a left click there, and that number is 100. Okay. Next, I'll go ahead and put a dimension on this line here. So I'm going to select that line, and right now it's giving me that diameter dimension. Do a right click before you place it, Dimension Type, Radius, left click and place it, and this has a diameter of 15. Alright, let's go ahead and put our other circle on the inside of this. Now I'm using the circle command to create these holes. I can also do that with the hole command, right? But I'll show you here on the circle command, when we go to creating those individual parts for an assembly, we'll use the hole command, right? So let's go ahead and create this circle. It's going to be right on the inside of this one, and it has a diameter of 20. So right now it's asking me for a diameter. The way I can tell that is you see that dotted line going right across that circle. So from here, I can just go ahead and type in 20, and I don't have to worry about doing any other things, right? All right, so a couple other things I need to do. I'm going to draw a line from that center going straight out this direction here. Go ahead and hit escape. I'm going to make these two lines equal to each other, and the reason I'm doing that is that here at the bottom is keeping a running tab on how many dimensions I need. So when I select equal and select this line here is equal to that one, I'm just kind of shortening this. I just want to make sure that everything stays. I want everything to be fully constrained is the word I was looking for there. Let's go ahead and dimension from this line to this line. Give me an angle. And I'll go ahead and type in for this one, 0. All right. Now I'm setting this up on purpose because later on I can come back and change this and make it 45 degrees and it'll work just perfectly for what I need to do when I create the second part of this one, right? So right now, let's go ahead and leave it at 45 degrees just to show you that my test should work here. All right, I'm going to draw a line, and I'm just going to draw that line right across here. And likewise here at the bottom, I'm going to draw another line going straight across here. I'm going to add some tangent constraints. So I'll go to tangent, select this line here, and then select that shape. This line in here, this one and this one. And then finally, this line up to there, right? And then we're going to trim off these extra pieces. So I'll trim here and here. Once again, I'm just working my way around. I'm also going to trim off this portion in between here. And do the same up here. Okay, so now I have that done. Let's go ahead and select this line here. I'll hold down the Control button and select this line. And then I'll put it on the construction layer. All right, so now everything should be able to rotate if I change this number to 0. So I'm going to double click on that number and I'll type in 0, and you do see that that does change, right? So it's a huge benefit of us setting that up, since I know that later on when I want to change this part, it's going to be easy to change one number. Okay, go ahead and hit the Finish Sketch button. And then we're going to go to Extrude. And once again, it's going to say, hey, what do you want to extrude? Do you want to extrude just that little face or all of this on the inside? So I'm going to select this part here. I'm going to change the distance of this. That number should be 20. And then I have to tell it which direction I want it to go. In this case, I do not want it to be bisected. You can see if I go that direction, that's not what I want. So I really want to send it that direction there. Go ahead and hit the OK button. And now we have that piece, right? Now, another thing that you probably didn't notice is that if I come back to this, I can double click on this icon and come back. And what's happening right now is that the Boolean effect is telling it to go ahead and join these together. So this is one of those ways where you can create individual parts, although it's one part. I don't have to join these, right? I can tell it to go ahead and make it a totally new solid, and then these solids are two separate solids. So they will be as one file, just like we would do in AutoCAD, but they'll be created as two separate files. And then if later on I wanted to come back and add those together, there is a combine option here, right? So we can still create it like AutoCAD and keep them as individual parts. But in our case, we want to create these as one part, right? So I do have that option to do both here, just for drawing purposes, and say, hey, I can create these as individual parts. But in our case, let's go ahead and leave it as one part, right? Okay, let's kind of rotate around to the backside here. And then I'm going to create a plane on this backside. So just like we did before, I'll click on the plane. I'm going to select this face just by left clicking and hold down the left click button. It looks like I waited a hair too long. Let me escape out of that. Let's go back to the plane. Left click and hold and drag it back this direction. Type in your -20. Go ahead and hit enter, right? Now we're going to create a sketch on that plane. So I'm going to select this plane here. I'm going to select this icon here to start a new sketch on it. I'll come down to the bottom here, get rid of my slice geometry, right? And then I'm going to go ahead and project in that arc there. So I'll select it and then go to project geometry. And now from here, I'll go ahead and start creating my other pieces. So I'll go to the circle command. I'm going to click here. And this one has a radius of 35. Now, if you don't want to switch and do the radius and you can do the simple math in your head, you know that that is also a diameter of 70. So you can go ahead and type in a diameter of 70 here. And then I can go ahead and create my other two circles along here. So I'll go a circle here and one more here. Now I purposely made sure that these were not in line with each other, right? Just to show you that there's other methods that you can use to keep these in line. Or if you're having some idea that you might want to rotate these later, you can do like I did on the first one by creating a line here and then setting it up for that rotation. But we know that this one is going to remain flat, so I'll leave this one alone. But in order to get these in line with each other, I can also use the horizontal constraint, right? And this is where you got to be careful at. If I go to horizontal, and once I see these dotted tracking lines, make sure those dotted tracking lines are going horizontal. I'm going to click this center point, and then that center point, and that's going to put them in line with each other. Then we'll add a dimension from this center to that center, which happens to be 100. And then we're going to put some dimensions on this, right? This circle here has the equal that circle, and just based off of the drawing, so I'll use the equal constraint. I'll go ahead and select that circle and then that circle. So those two are now locked to be the same size. Benefit of that, now I have only one more dimension to create. Let's escape out of that and put our dimension here and go ahead and click here. And then this dimension is going to have a diameter of 60. Right? And let's take a look at the drawing, and I'll show you why I chose 60. All right, so you can see that I'm kind of building this part here. The reason I chose to be 60 as opposed to this 40 is because we have to put this other cylinder going around it. So this cylinder that I'm talking about is this one here. So we're going to create that cylinder inside of this one. So what I'm doing is on this shape is I'm creating this circle, so I'm able to put that cylinder to the inside of it. All right, so lastly, let's go ahead and throw a couple of lines in here. So I'll draw a line going straight across here at the top. Oh, and we're going to draw another line here going across the bottom. Make sure that those lines are horizontal. We can use the tangent constraint like we did before. So just go ahead and tangent those to that one. Now I don't have to do the tangent on the back of this one, mainly because it is a horizontal line. So let's go ahead and trim and get rid of all of this extra stuff. So I'm just trimming around to here. All right, now that's done. Let's go ahead and go to Finish Sketch. Extrude it. Select this plane on the inside of here, because once again we have a couple of different planes that we can extrude. We can extrude here, inside of here, or this one. So we want this one. We're going to send it that direction, and it has the correct direction, and we're going to send it back a distance of 20. Okay, now here's another one of those cool benefits of creating things with planes. I can go ahead and edit these planes here, and I'll show you by doing that. I can come and define or edit the dimension on this, and you see that it's a -20. Let's go ahead and make that a -10 and see what happens, right? And you'll see that this will move forward. Let me go ahead and undo that, and it should jump backwards. So now you can see that you can edit this rather easy if you did get one of those dimensions wrong. All right, last thing I need to do is go ahead and put a cylinder running through here, right? And then we'll turn off all of these work planes, and we'll have everything done with this shape. So I'm going to select this face. I'm going to select this icon here to put a sketch on it. I'm going to go to Project Geometry, and then I'm going to select this face here, or sorry, that circle there. And then I'm going to go ahead and create a circle right in the inside of it here, and this has that diameter of 40. All right, so now we're actually done with the cylinder, or all the components that we need to create that cylinder. Go ahead and go to Finish Sketch, and then go to Extrude, and then we have to pick what we want to extrude, right? So I'm going to select right on the inside of here. Now, this is where we know certain things about this one. The drawing shows us that the overall length of this is set to 40, right? So we know the overall length is 40. We're at this face here, right? So this is where we're going to have to do a little math. We know that we can send it up 10 going this direction, and then the math tells us if we subtract that 10 minus from the 40, that the distance from this face here going down should be 30, right? So we're going to create this cylinder by using an asymmetric. And let's go ahead and take a look in Inventor, and I'll show you what I mean by the asymmetric icon here. Okay, so we were back at the, wait a minute, it looks like I lost my extrusion here. Let me go ahead and delete this one. And it jumped over when and I don't want to get rid of the sketch here. Okay, so let's go ahead and go back to the extrude. I'm going to select this face here. And then what's going to happen is that I need to give it an overall length, which in our case is at 40, right? Now you see that if I kind of turn this a little bit to the side, you will see that the 40 is actually pushing all the way through. And that's kind of not what we want. Let's take a good close look at this. So this last option is an asymmetric, right? So here is where I have to kind of explain or determine which side is going which direction, right? So I have a B size that's going 20, and I have an A size that's going 40. So you can see here from this face, there's my 40. That number needs to be set to 10, right? And then on this B side, that's going to be going this way. And you can also grab these arrows and pull them. So you don't have to type in the number, but just kind of keep in mind it won't be as accurate as you just typing them in. But I'm going to type in that number as 30. Once again, we have this all union together. Let's go ahead and hit OK. And then we'll go ahead and take a look at putting this back at an isometric. Let's click on the right here, front, and then isometric here. Okay. Let's go ahead and turn those work planes off. So I can select the work plane, do a right click on it, and then go to visibility. Here's a sneaky little shortcut for you. If you go to this work plane, do a right click and just type V on your keyboard, it'll automatically jump down to visibility and it'll turn it off for you. Okay. So now that we have that all nice and done, we can go ahead and save this one. So this is going to be our first save, and we're going to save this as, let's call it EX1, right? So this is my EX1. Okay, so now that this one is all done, what we're going to do is create a copy of this one, right? So we're going to go to the, let's see, to the top up here underneath this drop down. Go to File, up. There we go. Then I'll go to Save As, right? And then I want to save as a different name, right? So you have two different ways of doing this, and both of them will work more or less whichever one you do. But you can save as an active document content and it represents as a save copy as, or we can have saved as a different name in a different, as in the default format. So both of these are going to work absolutely the same. One is just going to keep it open here at the bottom, and the other one is just going to kind of close it and just rename it. But you're not going to destroy one of the parts depending on which one of these you use. So either one of these will work fine. So if I use the top one and I do a save as, and it's going to ask me for it. So you see, here's the one that I already have. And then if I make this one as example 2 and hit the save button on it, it's going to create me an example 2 here at the bottom here. And it's just going to close the example 1. If I'd use the other option here of a save copy, and I'm just going to make this one an example 4. I know we won't get there to an example 4 on this one, but if I do a save copy as, and then let's go ahead and rename this as, let's just make it 22, just so I know that it'll be totally out of the way. And once I hit the save button, it should have saved that, and I think it didn't open it. Where is it at? Okay. And let me see if it's actually there underneath the save. So it is there, right? So it basically made a copy of it, but it closed it down. So it still kept my number 2 open. Okay, either way. But anyway, I have my example 2 here, and this is the one that I'm just going to go ahead and change this to a 45 degree. So that was on the extrusion number 2. And so I'm going to expand that, and I'm going to double click on the icon next to sketch 2. So once I double click that, it should bring open this. I'm just going to double click this 0 one here, change it to 45, hit the finish sketch on it. And then for this one, it's actually done now. So I'm going to save this. Let's go ahead and open our number 1 here just so we have a comparison of them. So here's my number 1 and here's my number 2. So I do have both of these actually open, right? So that's kind of the magic way of doing it if you want to create these as, two different rotated parts. Now, once again, I will tell you that we can't do that in AutoCAD to get it to do that. But now let's take a look at doing this as an assembly, and then we can have these actual same principles combined. But the only problem with this is that we're going to have to make 4 individual pieces in order for that to happen, right? So let's go ahead and start creating that. So I'm going to jump over and create a new by selecting the new icon, standard millimeter IPT, hit the create button. And then we're going to just start creating these individual parts. So these are going to go a lot quicker because we're just only doing one part at a time. So I'm going to go to this Start 2D Sketch. I'm going to click it here on the XY plane. And then I'm going to draw a couple of circles, right? So I'm going to draw a circle from here to here. And then a circle from here to here. I'll do both of those dimensions. So I'm just going to put a dimension from here. That one is going to be 50. And then this one will be 30. So I'm going to go through this a lot quicker because, it's basically more or less the same steps that we did to create some of those other views. I'll go ahead and go to Finish Sketch, Extrude. I'm going to select in between here. I'm going to use a bisecting, and I'm going to change this to 95. That's my first piece. Go ahead and hit the OK on that. Go ahead and save it. And this is going to be my example piece number 3, right? So I'll go ahead and select here and tell it that this is part number 3. Well, you know what? Let's go ahead and just name it PT. PT1. So that'll be my part 1. Then let's go ahead and make PT number 2, right? So let's go to New, Standard Millimeter IPT. Go ahead and hit the Create button. And we're going to fly through these again. I'll go ahead and start a sketch. Click here. Go ahead and draw a couple of circles here. And depending on how you want this to be set up or where you want the center at, I'm going to place it here. And I'm going to draw a couple of circles here. And I'm just going to go ahead and kind of draw all of my circles out here. I'll draw a line from that center to this one. Right? Now, the benefit of doing this line here, I can left click and drag this line up and move this around right now. Right? Let's go ahead and put some dimensions on all of this. So let's go ahead and put a dimension on here. That's going to be 100. Just going to zoom out. Let's put our dimension here on the back side here. And this is a 70. This one is going to be, let's see, 50. Here on the front side, this is 30. And then on the inside here, this is 20. I'm just going to draw a couple of lines going across here. These are going to be my tangent lines. And then we're going to choose the tangent constraint. I'm just going to start tangenting these lines to here. Let's go ahead and trim this off. So trim. And once again, this is all the same stuff you saw me do in the other, when I was creating those parts as one. So I will, excuse me if it seems like I'm going a lot faster. But I'm going to select this line here and make it construction. And then I just need to locate this in reference to the center point here, right? So what I'm going to go do is I'm going to choose coincidence. I'm going to find the midpoint on this line here. Click that one. And then I'm going to go and click right on that center. And that should take care of two things in one shot, right? So it is centered based off of this 100. And it's automatically constrained and everything of that nature. Let's go ahead and hit the finish sketch. I'm going to zoom back a little bit. Extrude this. I always create my individual parts as symmetrical. This has a thickness of 20. And then I need to pick the profile, which is on the inside of here. Go ahead and hit OK. And then I'll save this part. So remember that I have PT1 here at the bottom. This is going to be PT2. All right, so now I'm ready to create my next part. Let's go back to the new icon here. Standard millimeter, IPT. I'm going to create a sketch. XY plane. Just like what I did before, I'm going to start off with a couple of circles. So a circle here, circle here. Kind of keep this in line with each other. Now I'll go ahead and draw a circle here and a circle here. All right. Let's go ahead and put some dimensions on it. This one has a dimension of 70. This one will have a dimension of 70. On the inside of this one, it should have a diameter of, let's say, 50. And then this one should have a diameter of 60. Got 4 more dimensions that I'm going to need to place on here. I'll draw a line going straight across from here to here. Let's put a dimension on this line. So a dimension going right across here. 100. And then finally, like I did with the other one before, I'm going to place this midpoint onto that one. So I'll choose coincidence, midpoint here to here. Let's go ahead and make that line a construction line. And then we're going to draw a couple of lines going right across the top here. Likewise on the bottom. Choose tangent. And tangent on here. And then we're going to just trim them. So we're just trimming these portions in between. All right, once that's done, let's go ahead and go to finish sketch. I'll zoom back a little bit. Go back to my extrude. I'm going to click on the inside of this. Distance that I need is 20. Then I'm going to send it symmetrical, right? Hit OK on this. And then save this one. This is going to be my PT3 part. So PT3. And then lastly, let's go ahead and take a look at our last part that we're going to make. So I'm going to go to the new icon here again, standard millimeter IPT, hit the create button. Come and create my sketch here. Go ahead and select here. So I'm on the XY plane. I'll go ahead and draw a couple of circles. So I'm going to create a circle here and another one here. Go ahead and place my dimensions. The outside dimension on this one should be set to 60. And then the inside one should be set to 40. Finish this sketch. I will extrude this. Once again, I like to do symmetrical. That distance is 40, and it's waiting on me to pick a profile. So right in between here is what I need to select. Hit OK. And then I'll go ahead and save this as well. So this is going to be my PT4, right? So PT4. Okay. So now I have all of my parts created. I have PT4 created. There's PT3. There's PT2. And then finally with PT1, right? So we have all of the parts created to make this shape. Now I'm going to place all of these together. So now I have to use another different format here in Inventor. And I'll go to the new icon. And so instead of creating a part, now I want to create an assembly. So I'll be using a standard millimeter IAM assembly. Let's go ahead and hit the create on that. I'm going to give it a couple of seconds for it to load up. And this is where it's going to be different, right? So we're going to start constraining and putting things together based on some information or what we're going to have to create it with. All right. So the first thing I need to do is go ahead and place my first part in. So I'm going to go to place. The first part I'm going to use is going to be PT1. So here in my list, I'll go find PT1, hit OK, or hit the open button. Now, while it's following my cursor around, what I usually do with my first part is do a right click, place grounded at origin, and then hit escape, right? Because it's going to ask you to put in another piece. So that piece is in now. Let's go ahead and place in our next piece. So I'm going to go to place. I'm going to go down here to find PT2, hit OK, and then I'll click here. All right, so now this brings me to my first constraint, right? So I want to constrain this, and I want to place this located here. I want this face and this face to be 15 back, right? So I want this one to be 15 back from this. Also, I need it to be collinear to this center lines, right? Well, luckily for us, we have one command that'll do almost all of this stuff in one shot. All right, so I'm going to go to constraint. I can use faces, right? I can say, hey, take this face and make it flush with this face by using that icon here. And then I can also put the centers in line with these two center lines here. And I can show you by doing that first. So if we wanted to do a flush, right? I mean, I want this face to be flush with that face. This is the flush command here. So I'll select here. I'll select that face and then that face. And you'll see that those will be in line with each other. Hit the apply button. And then I'll come and find the center. So I'll go ahead and take this back and make it a mate. Go find this center line here and place it at that center line. And I have it there, right? Now, the one thing I should have did on my flush, and the good thing is I can come back and change this, is that on my flush, which is going to be located under here, I can double click here and then I can give it a value, right? So I can tell it to, hey, go ahead and make that back 15. I actually put in -15. So I can tell it to go back 15 and it will say, okay, yeah, you meant to put that at 15. Now also keep in mind that this thing can spin right around here at the top, right? So that's one way of doing this. And I'm just going to undo back to another different option for you. Okay. The other option I can use is I can use constrain. Instead of using the mate and all of that, I have one that's called insert. So if I go to insert, I can select this face here with this face or this one. So I'm selecting these two circles and it says, okay, I can handle that for you, right? I can flip this around and then I can tell it the offset that I'm going to need. So I can tell it to be 15 here. And when I hit OK, it's all done in one shot, right? So I have that that already inserted in, and I also have it pushed back at 15. All right, the next thing I'm going to need to do is going to be able to apply some kind of angle to this, right? So what I mean by that is that I'm just going to kind of rotate this one up a little bit. Now this is where, when you create your certain parts, it's a good idea to put things on certain origins, and you'll notice that when I created these shapes, I tried to keep these planes right in the middle, and this is the reason why I did that. So I'm going to select this one, and I'm on my part number 2. I'm finding the XZ plane. I'm going to do a right click on it, and then I'm going to tell it to be visible. Likewise here on my part that's running through here, I'm going to find the plane, which is my XZ plane. I'm going to select that and then do a right click and make that visible. Now the reason that I'm doing this is because this is going to give me a couple of different options, right? I can either choose to constrain these by a couple of different ways. So when I come to the constraint option, if I knew that this was going to always be horizontal to each other, I can just say, hey, take this plane and this plane and lock them with each other, right? And you can see that it flipped it to the other side. I can kind of hit that button there to flip it to the other side. So however you want to constrain that, I can do that, right? If I don't like this option here, I also have an option to put it at an angle, right? So I can come back to my constraint. I can go find angle here. I can use just 2 planes that I need to create this. I can select this angle or that plane there and this plane, and it says, hey, I'll give you an angle. And right now it's set to 0. If I type in 45, it will rotate it up at a 45 degrees for us, right? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave this angle set to 0, since I know that this one is going to be one that's going to change. All right, so we'll leave that at 0 for now. Let's hit close on that. Let's go ahead and bring in our other points here. So let's bring in PT3. So I'll go to place, go find PT3, hit open, and then click here. So like we did before, I'm going to use this all in one lump sum, right? So I'm going to go to constraint. I'm going to choose the insert. I'm going to select that circle on the back side here. And then I'm going to select this one here. It's going to put them together. Remember the offset that I need for that one should be 20. And you can see that it went the wrong direction. And if it does that, that's okay. But what I need to do is actually flip it. So when I do it that way, you're going to see that it does rotate to where I need it to be. All right, let's take a look at it from the top. So that's going to be my 20 back from that. Go ahead and hit OK. Let's go ahead and take back a look at this in isometric. And remember that this can spin. So I can go to this one, go to the origin. I'm going to go find my XZ plane, do a right click on it, turn the visibility on, and then I can go ahead and constrain those 2 planes together. So I'm going to go to constraint. Let me rotate this to a better isometric view so you can see more of it. And I'm going to go from this plane here, and I'm just using a regular constraint to it, right? So I'm just using a mate to it, to this one. And if it jumps to the other side, just tell it no, you want those to be flush with each other. And it should highlight it there. Go ahead and hit OK. And then the last thing I need to do is go ahead and put this cylinder that's right on the inside of here, right? So I'm going to go to place, PT4, go ahead and hit open, click here. Now with this one, I know I want this to be symmetric, and I don't want to have to do any extra math to it, and we can automatically constrain and give it a distance off of it. But remember that when I created all of these, I did a good job of making sure that I place these where I can get to them, right? And what I mean by that is that I should be able to get to a lot of these different planes that are located on certain things, right? So I'm going to go find the origin on this one. And once I expand the origin, I'm going to need to find the, let's see, that plane that's running right through the middle of it, which should be the XY plane. I'm going to right click and turn the visibility on that one. And then I'm going to come to my PT3 here, and remember that we have an XY plane on that one. So I'll go ahead and turn the visibility on this one. Okay, so now that I have these set up, I'm going to use my constraints. I'll choose that center with this one. That locks these 2 centers together. Let me show you that I can still move this back and forth. To alleviate any math out of this, I can go ahead and place a constraint between this plane here and that plane. So I can go to constraint, select this plane and that plane, and it should jump over there. Come on, waiting on it to jump. And if it's not going to jump right now, try flipping it to the other one and then hit OK. So now it's automatically centered on that without me having to do any kind of work or any kind of math. But that's all because I set it up properly in the beginning, right? Let me go ahead and collapse all of this stuff here. And it should be a collapse all. And another thing that you can do is you can turn off all of these planes. And if I'm not mistaken, that should be underneath the view tab here. And then it says view objects. And then I want to go ahead and turn off my origin planes. So if I do that, all of them should go off at once, right? So now I have this thing set up to where it looks at just looking at it this way, right? But I want to show you a variance of being able to have this showed at a different angle. Okay, so the way that we're going to be able to do this is going to be underneath our representations. So let's go ahead and expand that one. And then we have one that says position, right? So right now it's set to my standard primary position. But if I do a right click on where it says position and then I choose new, what happens underneath here is when I expand this, I have a primary position and then I have a position 1, right? So now it's showing that, hey, in the primary position, and if I double click on that, it's going to stay here. If I go to position 2, it's going to stay here, right? I haven't did any kind of changes to it yet, but if I go underneath, let's see, and that should be underneath either part 1 or part 2. So either PT1 or PT2 are going to have the exact same constraint that I need to adjust. And it's going to be this angle one, right? So I'm under position 1 right now. And then it has my position 1 set up. I'm just going to double click on it and I click on the icon and you're going to see that now I get a position representation of this, right? How do I want to override this? Do I want to suppress it or do I want to change the value? In our case, I'm going to change the value. I'm going to make it 45 degrees. And now you see that that does go up to 45 degrees, right? So now in position 1, it's set to 45 degrees. If I double click back on primary, it'll go back to the 0 degrees, right? So now I have both of these representations that I can also use in drawing. So when I go to get to the drafting portion of this, you'll see that I can pick which position do I want this to show as. Now, once again, the only downside to this is that each one of these are individual parts, to whereas in AutoCAD, each one of them can be different views, and then I kind of had to weld it together. But I do have those options located underneath my example 1 and my example 2, right? So I do have both of those located and placed in those. So it's just depending on how you want this to appear. So example 1, I have it laid down. Example 2, I have it kind of positioned up, and these are all as one pieces. But in my assembly, I have them as individual pieces, and the benefit of that is that I can control these now by position, right? So I can add another position to this without really having to create a whole new drawing off of this. I can have this thing positioned in 90 degrees. I can have another position on this. So what I mean by that is that I can add another position. Let's come up to the top position. And let's go ahead and name this one at 45 degrees just so I don't confuse myself here. So that's going to be my 45 underneath position 2. If I come to this angle here and double click back on this icon, I can change the value of this one and say, hey, in position 2, send that thing up at 90. Let's go ahead and rename this one to 90. And now I have a 90. I have this thing set to 45, or I can go back to the primary. So I can put multiple positions of how I want this to be displayed on my drawing, right? So next, I'm gonna go ahead and save this. And so let's do a save on this, and let's just call this is gonna be PT assembly, just to show you that I do have all of these. And this is just saying, hey, this is the first initial save of these. That's okay. So all of this now is saved, and I have multiple positions already created off of this, and this is all in one file, right? So that's the benefit of it. That's the beauty of it. Now let's go ahead and switch over to the drafting portion and see how we're going to create drawings off of this. The way we do that is we'll just go ahead and click on this new icon, and now we're going to go down a little bit more. We're going to choose the ANSI millimeter IDW, hit the create button, or you can double click on it. And I forgot to do something. I remembered that I was going to tell you that I was going to do those with the whole command, and it just dawned on me when I created those parts and I knocked them out so fast. But I do have some other videos where I do have those drawn in the whole command. But I do apologize for not showing you whole command in this video. Okay, let's go ahead and get rid of this title block part here. So I don't need that. I'm just going to select it and right click on it and hit delete. And then I'm ready to bring in some of my parts, right? So I'll go to base. And so now it's going to bring in, what part do I want? Do I want to bring in each one of these parts individually? Do I want to bring in an example? So let's bring in an example 1. I'm going to bring that in as an isometric. And then I'm going to click it up here at the top, right? So I'm going to leave it at 1 to 1. Let's go ahead and hit OK on that. Let's bring in example number 2. So I'll go back to base. I'm going to take a look at example number 2. I'm going to make this an isometric as well. And then I'm going to place this up here at this top, right? All right, so we have both of those pieces drawn, and this is exactly what we did in AutoCAD, is that we created both of these in 2D and in 3D. But now let's go ahead and take a look at bringing in that assembly. So when I come down to the assembly, which is located here, I'll get other things here, right? I got some other states that I can use. Remember that I had some primary views, right? So I can bring in the primary, and I'm just going to make this an isometric. The primary view is one of them. I can click here and say, hey, I want that to be the 45 degree one, or I can tell it to, hey, make it the 90 degree one. And so I can select which one I want rather quickly and hit the OK button. And now I have that one kind of positioned. Let me move this one how I want it. So I can bring in all 3 of those if I want. I can come back to this, bring in that assembly again, tell it, hey, give me primary 1, which is the primary view of this one. Bring in this one. Or bring in the one that's sitting at a 45 degrees, right? So we can knock all of these out rather quickly just by setting this up into the drawing portion of it, right? So once again, down here at the bottom are all my assemblies, and then here at the top I have these two are example 1 and example 2 respectively, right? So it just depends on how you want this to look. Now I'll jump over and show you a little bit more, and I see that this video is getting a little long, so I'm not going to spend too much time on drafting on this one. I do have a few other drafting videos that I have done in doing this, but let's go ahead and create a new sheet real quick. So I'm going to come back to here, right? And I think I can go to, yeah, there it is there. I can click on the new sheet here. I can go to my base. And I can bring in this view here. So this is underneath my assembly right now. So here's my assembly view. I can go ahead and click here as my top view. I can go over here and go ahead and create my isometric. Then I can hit OK. Like we do with everything else, sections are rather easy. I can go ahead and click on section. I'll click this view here. I'm just going to touch this, kind of track over, do a left click, come straight across, do a left click here. Then do a right click and choose continue. Deciding on which way I want those arrows to go, either up or down. That's kind of the way I have to move my icon here. So I want them to point down. I'll left click here. And it should create that for me. Let's go ahead and break this alignment so I can move this over here. So I'm going to select this view, do a right click on it, go find alignment, and then tell it to break it. Then I'll go ahead and place this dimension here. Okay, so this is my, remember that this is my assembly, and the way I can tell that is that these are 4 individual parts, right? If I make one more sheet, and then I'm going to create it as my example 1, so I'll go to base, up here at the top in the drop down, and the reason why these are highlighted in here is because they're open at the bottom here. So anything that I do have open, it will be in this list of drop down. If it wasn't open, you would have to select this icon here and go and find it. Well, we're going to take a look at example 1, which is this one. We're going to do the exact same thing. So I'll go ahead and click this view here, this one. I'll do my isometric here in the top corner, hit the OK button, and then I'll put my section through it. So just like I did before, go ahead and click a section, click this view, find the center, touch it, track off of it, do a left click, come straight across, one more left click, right click, continue, and then move your cursor up above it, do a left click there. And then what I want to do is I want to go ahead and place this over here, right? So remember, I have to find the highlighted of this view. It looks like I got right off of it. Do a right click on it, go find the word alignment, and then choose break. All right, so we have this one created, right? So once again, this one has it all together. If I go back to my other sheet here, on sheet number 2, you'll see that these are individual parts, and the way I can see that is that the hatching are shown going different directions for each individual part, right? Let's go ahead and take a look at the one that has an angle, and I think I'm going to probably cap it there. I'll put a couple of dimensions on this, but overall, there's no special dimensions that are going across this one. All right, so I'll add one more sheet, and I think I might be able to combine these into one. So I'll go to base. Let's go ahead and take a look at example number 2. It's at the 45 degrees, right? And then we're going to go ahead and click that dimension, and we're going to place it here. And we'll go ahead and put an isometric up here in the corner. Hit OK. I'm going to move these over a little bit, just so I give myself a little bit of room. Okay, so now I want to put a section on this one, right? So I'll go to section. I'm going to select this view here. And then I need to find, oh, look like I went too fast there. I'll go to section. I want to select this view here. I'm just going to track off of this endpoint. I'll come to here, do a left click here, come straight across, go to this center, do a left click on that center, and then go straight up here. I'm just going to kind of track off of that center. So I'm just going to touch that center, and I'm going to go right through it, do a left click here, follow that with a right click, hit continue. And then I'm going to go straight up from it, do a left click here. Okay. And then what I'm going to do next is I'm going to select this view, do a right click, and then I'm going to choose the alignment and then break. All right. And now I can place that there. Let's just move it up a little bit because I'm going to try to put in my other view of this one just to kind of show you the difference. Now, that's kind of how you make an aligned dimension on this one, or aligned section, sorry. And then we'll do our final one here. Let's go to the base. We're going to choose underneath our primary. Let's go to the 45. We're going to place it here. We'll place a dimension or a view above it. And let's go ahead and put one isometric here in the corner. Hit OK. All right, so these two should look exactly alike, but the section is going to look exactly like the other one once we put our section through this. So I'm going to add one more section for you. I'm going to go to section, select this view here, find the center, touch it, track, do a left click here, go to the center. Once you find that center, do a left click on that center. Move your cursor up through it, touch that center, go right through it, do a left click here, then do a right click, hit continue. Come right above it, do a left click. Okay. Then you're going to select that view, do a right click on it, find alignment, and then break it. Now that should give me the freedom to move this. Oh, don't think I broke it yet. Let's see. Left click on it. Go find alignment, go find break, and that should allow me to move it. Okay. So that's kind of the broad way of doing this, you know, and like I said, doing dimensions on this is super easy. Let's go ahead and put them on. This sheet seems to be fine. So with dimensions, they're super easy in this. Underneath the annotations, just go to dimension. And it'll automatically distinguish between what should be a diameter dimension as opposed to a radius dimension, right? So it's smart enough to know that if something is all the way around, it looks like I did that dimension twice, that it's going to typically put a diameter dimension there. You can override that if you like. So for example, this one, it will automatically put a radius there. But if I left click on this, and as I'm getting ready to place this, do a right click, I can change the dimension type and say, hey, make that a diameter dimension. So you do have that option on there as well, right? But by far this is, it's kind of really intuitive, and it just keeps things going really nice and smooth as you're creating this. Another thing that you're seeing me is that I'm creating these dimensions rapid fire. In order to do that, if you create your dimensions, and if I place my first dimension here, well, actually I don't need to do that. With one of my dimensions I have here, go ahead and double click on it. And in order to turn like the rapid fire effect on, uncheck this box. If you have this box unchecked, what that's going to do is allow you to just start throwing dimensions on in rapid fire succession, right? It's not going to stop you after every one and say, hey, do you want to customize these dimensions? So that's kind of my way of knocking out things, kind of in a rapid fire format here. And I'm just kind of knocking these out really quick for you. There's no kind of special logic, or I'm not going into any kind of special detail of how to do these, although I do have many videos on this channel of me kind of explaining a lot more of this stuff to you. But what I generally like to do, what I show you, is that when I put a few dimensions on this thing, is that I'll generally put my dimensions on first, no matter what style they are or things of that nature, and then I'll go ahead and adjust the style, and the style is going to be underneath the manage icon here. Click on the style editor. Okay, so once the style editor opens up, what I tend to do is I go ahead and tell it to not display those trailing zeros. So that'll go, or send those away. And another thing that I typically do is underneath the text here, I like all of my text to be horizontal. But a lot of this stuff will be kind of set up for you in your company's standard, or however you want to do it standardly, right? So so that'll be totally up to you on how you want this to, or how you want your text to be displayed, right? So when I hit the OK button, you see that it will adjust all of these. And that's one of the things that I do, right? You can also see that it automatically put these diameter symbols in here. Super neat. So a lot of this stuff that it knocked out for us that we had to do a little bit manually in AutoCAD. And the reason why these dimensions are so small as well is that these are on a D-size drawing. So the text height is still standard, but on a D-size drawing, the text is going to be a lot smaller, right? But I see this video is getting quite long, and if you do have any more additional questions about this, please leave me a comment below, and if I need to make a separate video explaining some of the other things that I may have done in this video, please let me know. But in this one, I tried to show you the difference between, basically making an assembly as opposed to making making them individuals. So you can see with the assemblies, I can knock out multiple different iterations, as opposed to if I create them as one, I'm kind of basically stuck with that one iteration at a time. Although I did show you one neat little shortcut that if you set it up correctly, you can make these iterations rather easy if it's only like one or two things that you're fixing. In the assembly portion of this, yeah, if I had another piece on the back of this, I can also make that move along with it. So I can have this primary views and all of these secondary views. I can have multiple things moving, right? So that's one of the other benefits about doing things as an assembly. But as it says, it's not one part, it'll be multiple parts. And so if your drawing or whatever you're trying to achieve, let me go back to here, is trying to create it as one part, then you're going to definitely want to create these in using the first methods that I showed you, right? So, all right. So I think this is kind of getting a little long-winded drawing here. So I want to thank you for, tuning in and watching this. And here's all of the parts that we created today. Hopefully you enjoyed watching this. And if you got any comments, please let me know. I did enjoy explaining this kind of stuff and these kind of concepts to you, right? So stay tuned for the more of this stuff that I got coming up here in the future. I will try to put more assembly drawings together, as well as showing you different things that we can do in AutoCAD. So until next time, happy drafting.